Welcome back, everyone. So today we'll discuss how to find domain and range of any trigonometric function. Okay, it either sine, cosine, tangent, cosecant, secant, or cotangent. Okay, so let's talk about the domain in trig function. Here, domain it is gonna be in terms of angles, right? So if domain will be angles. So if it's angles, we can only define angles in a unit of degrees or radian, right? So your domain will be either degrees or radians. However, when you plug the domains in any function, any trig function, right? Any trig function, when you plug the domains at the degrees or radians, let's say in angles, right? In angle like 90 degree or pi by 2, you get the real values, real life values, right? Let's say sine 90 degree is just 1, right? Cosine 90 degree is just gonna be in terms of 0. So this is 1 0, you get the value of real number. So the range is gonna be real number. Okay, either it's gonna be all the real number, or in some cases some of the real number. Okay, so here I wrote it down so that you guys have clear view on it. So it is the set of angles in degrees or radians. Okay, and for range it is the set of all the real number, or some cases some of the real number. Okay, let's find the domain and range for the sine function and cosecant function. So let me draw a table for you guys, so that will make much more sense for you guys. So here we go. So we have to write down x in terms of degrees, right? Radians or degrees. So let's just do it here. So this is our x values, okay, and this is our sine function. So let's say if we put sine negative 180 degree, so that is gonna be just negative 1. Oh, sorry, that's gonna be just what, 0, right? This is gonna be negative 1 0 1 0. You see, for the sine value here on domain, we can put any numbers here. That means domain here, x, all the real number, right? All the real number. However, you can look at this, the sine function, the output will get either 0 is between negative 1 to 1, right? So I'm going to show you the graph, so that will make much more sense for you guys. Look at this graph. If you can see this, guys, look at this graph. You notice that it never goes, the y value never goes more than 1 or less than negative 1. Did you see that? So that's mean our range is between this, right? So we can just write it down now. Is this, what will be our range? Our range will be here, y is negative 1 to 1. Okay, that is our range. Now let's do the cosecant now. Okay, cosecant is what? Cosecant is gonna be opposite of this here. So it was, we had 0 here, right? So opposite of this will be actually undefined. Let's just draw another graph here. Oh, the table, right? Look, let's just do it here. Yep. So what do we see? This is our x values, right? This is our x values. So if you put, this is undefined here, it's cosecant is undefined at 180 degree. Then again this is going to be negative 1, again it's undefined, again it's 1, again it's undefined. This means cosecant is undefined when it comes to pi, right? So you can just write down in the domain like this. Our domain will be for cosecant x all the real number, and x cannot be pi or any multiplication of pi. Here n is an integer, okay? Any integer, it doesn't matter. Integer. And what will be the range? You see, the range here is between, it cannot be less than negative, it cannot be between -1 to 1, okay? You see that it can be less than -1 or more than -1, more than 1, okay? Less than -1 or more than 1. So we can just write it down, y, all the real number, and y can be less than -1, or y can be more than -1, positive 1, okay? This is our sign. Let's talk about now cosine function. So let's draw a chart for the values. Here we go. Let's just make it a little smaller, more smaller, okay? Yep, that will do. So these are our x values, right? This is our x values, and when you put the x values, you get the cosine function value here. That's mean the y values. So it's gonna be 1 0 1 0 -1, right? So you see the domain can be from -infinity positive infinity. That's mean x is all the real number. However, the range, the y values, is between -1 to 1. Let me show you the graph that will make you much more clear for you guys. This is the graph for cosine function, right? So you see here, cosine function is between the value you always gets between -1 to 1, right? Anywhere, any places. But x can be infinity, right? From this part to this part, it doesn't matter, it can be infinity. So since we have it, we can just write down now the domain is x, all the real number, right? And the range, however, is between -1 to 1. Okay, now let's do the secant function. The secant function, let's draw the table. That is much more easier to see. So you see, for these are the x values. The cosecant value is going to be 1. This is going to be undefined, 1, undefined, -1. So that's mean, sorry, this is a secant function. So secant function is just undefined whenever we see pi by 2 or 90 degree and pi by 2, right? So we can just write down for domain for secant function is just x, okay? And x cannot be pi by 2 plus n pi. We can just write down this. Here, n is any integer, okay? Any integer. How about the range? You see, the range we get 1, 1, -1. That's mean it can be more than 1, but it cannot be between 1 to -1. You see, it cannot be between 1 to -1. You always get undefined values between 1 to -1. So we can just write it down. The range is less than -1 or more than 1. Let's for 10 function. 10, what is 10 180 degree? It's just 0, right? And pi by 2 is undefined. Again, it's 0, it's undefined, and it's 0. So that's mean our domain here, what will be our domain? Since 10 is undefined is negative pi by 2. Let me show you the graph. That will make much more sense for you guys. Look, you see, this is the 10 function, right? You see the here, this is the x, these are the x values, this is the y values, right? So x can be all the values, but not the pi by 2 or multiplication of pi by 2, right? This can be pi, 0, negative pi, right? And for the y value, it can be like, you know, it can be unlimited. So if hopefully you guys figured out what I was trying to say. So our domain is, let's just write down the domain now. Domain is x, all the real number. However, x cannot be pi by 2 or its multiplication, right? Plus, okay, so n is any integer here. And however, what is the range? Range is y can be all the real number, okay? All the time, y can be all the real number. For cotangent x, it's gonna be, you see the cotangent x will be the same. However, let's just draw the, that will make you guys much more sense. Here, look here. So cosine is undefined is at pi. Sorry, cotangent is undefined at pi. Here is going to be 0. Here is going to be undefined. Here is going to be 0. Here is going to be undefined. So if you look at this, the graph, right? Look at this graph. You see, this time it is undefined. Each time we hit pi, it's undefined, right? You can see it from this graph. You see, there is no in the pi. You can see that in the pi line, it just is, it is undefined. It never touches to pi. Okay. So we will have, now we can just write it down for the domain. This one, x is all the real number, but x cannot be and pi, right? What is here? N is again any integer, okay? Any integer. And what will be the range here? Range will be just simply y gonna be all the real number, okay? These are our function here. If you take a look, sine, you see the domain, sine and cosine has the domain all the real number, and the range is the same between -1 to 1, -1 to 1. Okay, for tan function, however, is undefined as pi by 2, and this pi by 2 plus pi n for any integer. N is any integer, right? And range, however, is the all real number. Cotangent has the range is all the real number. However, the domain is x cannot be n pi, right? X can be all the real number, cannot be n pi. For the 10, x cannot be pi by 2 plus n pi. For cosecant x, you see, x can be all the real number, cannot be n pi, right? And for secant x, x can be all the real number except it cannot be pi by 2 and n pi, right? For the range, for cosecant and secant, we have the same range. It's gonna be less than -1 or more than 1. Same thing, less than -1 or more than 1. Hope you guys understand. If you guys like this video, please like and subscribe and ask me any question in comment box.